You have a past, but then you gave your life to Jesus. Now what? Well, last week we talked about how to move past our past, because if Jesus has forgiven us and forgotten, well, we probably should too. So today let's talk about those people who have moved past their past, but now they're using their past to help other people come to know Jesus. And the question we want to ask today is this: knowing that, how do we treat people? Are we the judge? Do we judge people about how they act and they shouldn't do that and they're not being very Christian-like? Or are we a doctor? Do we help someone? Do we help someone try to heal from their past? Join us today as we continue through Luke, picking up right where we left off last week. Look at 2 Corinthians 1, 3-4 in your handout. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in our afflictions, so that we will be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. He's saying, you had a problem, God saved you out of it, comforted you through it. Now your job is to go help someone else. That's what the Christian life's about. If we turn so far, it's me, poor me, we miss the whole point of being a Christian. It's go out. If you start serving someone, you would be shocked at how your life will change. I don't know, I keep getting off on these whole tangents. So I want to show you in the Bible that it's filled with sinners who did stupid things, okay? Noah, David, Elijah, we've got a list. So I want to go through and just show you some verses that show you that these are people that God used in mighty ways and they did stupid stuff. And I want you to see that that's the God that we serve. We all do stupid stuff. I do every day of my life. And yet I know when I go to bed at night that God, I'm so sorry, change me. That's what we do. And then we move on. His mercies are new every day. Look at Noah, the only man on this earth that remotely loved God. And God says, because of you, Noah, and your love, I am going to have you build a boat. He shares God with the people for 120 years, I think it was. And of course, everyone laughed at him, thought he was goofy, shut the doors up. Noah's in the boat, and he gets off of the boat, and look at what it says in Genesis 9:20. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Now, we're like, okay, whatever, but in the context of this, that would be like, Noah is this man of God. Like, he gets off the boat, they worship God, he trusts God, he serves God, and he does something stupid. He gets drunk, gets naked. That would be like your pastor, like, why is Pastor so-and-so running down the street drunk and naked? You'd be like, okay, that's just creepy, whatever. Okay, kind of the same scene here. You're thinking, men of God shouldn't do that. Noah shouldn't do that. He did, but God still used him in a mighty, mighty way. I look at Genesis 12, talking about Abraham. Abraham, the man of faith. Look at how the man of faith acts. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarah, his wife, I know you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. So say you're my sister, that it will go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake, but for my sake. Oh, you're thinking, really? This man of faith, this guy who's like, God says, Abraham is my man. And you're like, really? He lied, which put Sarah in a whole lot of jeopardy. Like, she was so beautiful that Pharaoh was like, hey, I want her in my harem. So he like pimps out his wife, and you're thinking, really? This is the man of faith? God, you really want to use someone like that? And God says, yeah, I really do. He is my man. He's my. So we do stupid stuff. Okay, we got to get over it. Moses, our great Moses. Look at Exodus 2:11. One day when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people, looked on their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hit him in the sand. Moses kills some guy. You're like, really, God? And you want to use a murderer? And yet look what God uses him for in Exodus 14:21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. The Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. The people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on the ground, and the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. And you're like, really? Moses, someone who killed someone, and you're going to use him to part the sea and lead the nation of Israel out of Egypt? And God's going, yes, that's exactly who I want. Moses is my man. I don't care about his past, okay? I want to use him now in the future. We look at David, had an affair, everyone knows that. Bathsheba murders his lover's husband. And there's one point in the Bible where David wants to take a census or do something, and he's not supposed to, and he does it anyway, disobeys God. And because of it, 70,000 of his men are killed. 70,000. So if you think that you're such a sinner, like, oh, I hurt one person. Okay, David's sin caused 70,000 people their lives. Think how you would feel if that was you. And that's what I'm saying. And you're thinking, well, what does God say about that? He says, David is a man after my own heart. A man after my own heart. He loves me so much. But he just disobeyed you and had an affair and killed someone. Yeah, I know, but he's my man anyway. Because God says I can take your past and get rid of it, and I can still make something of your life if you would just let me. Now, most of us aren't pimping out our husband and sleeping with our, yard guy, and most of us didn't murder someone, or so that's probably not on our list. But let's talk about depression for a second, because a lot of people are depressed and they're thinking, God could never love me. What's wrong with me? I'm a Christian and I just can't get over my depression. And I get that, because we talk to people a lot that go through stuff like that. But I want to show you about Elijah. Elijah was a prophet of God, and he was one of these guys that stood up for his faith. He goes head to head with Jezebel and Ahab, the most wicked king and his wife ever in the Bible. And he goes to them and he's like, yeah, there's going to be a drought. And there was, and everyone wants to kill Elijah, and he stood up for his faith. And so you have this scene where he finally meets up with all the Baal prophets of Baal, and there's this big contest, and Elijah sees God literally like fire from heaven, and God wins, Baal doesn't, is what it looks like. Elijah goes, kills all the prophets, and there's like 450 of them or something, kills them all. Okay, then he prays to God for the drought to be over. Here comes the rain. Okay, the guy's incredible, loves God. God is all on his side. But look what happened right after that happened. 1 Kings 19, verse 2. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, so may the gods do to me and more if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this tomorrow. So Jezebel, wicked Jezebel, says, yeah, Elijah, you're so done. And look at after everything that Elijah just saw, look what happens. Then he was afraid, and he arose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree, and he asked that he might die, saying, it's enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. And here is a man who has seen God do incredible things. You are talking the pastor of all pastors, and you're like, but he's depressed. How do you love God and love Jesus and be depressed? Because it happens. It just does. And we got to learn how to get past that and know that if you're depressed, it's probably a season. Get some help. We have our Discouraged book that says, go get on some medicine if you need to help you through this time. Maybe it's something in your life. Maybe it's hormonal. We're women, okay? We just have hormone stuff. That's just the way it is. Sometimes you need a little click here or there or whatever. So no problem that. Go. But for him, you're wondering, but God can't love me if I'm depressed. Yeah, I can. Because look at what he did with Elijah. 2 men in the Bible did not die. Elijah was one of them. And you're like, well, he was depressed. How could he be a man of God? Look what 2 Kings 2:11 says. And as they they still went on and talked, behold, chariots of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. So, here's the deal. God said, Elijah, I love you so much regardless of your depression. I love you even though you wanted to die, okay? I love you that much. I'm even going to come get you with a chariot and fire, and I'm not even going to make you die. How's that? That's how much I love you. And I just want us to realize that people in the Bible struggle the same way as you and I struggle, and we all have that same choice. Now, you may be here and you're like, well, I walked away from my faith. I was a good Christian girl when I was young, and then I got into college, did stupid stuff, and I walked away from my faith, and I haven't been to church in years, and Jesus cannot possibly love me. And I want to show you Peter. Peter, the rock, the man who followed Jesus. He's in Jesus' inner circle. Peter, James, and John. And right as Jesus is getting ready to be taken and crucified, we see this in Luke 22, verse 31. Jesus says, Simon, Simon, behold, Simon is Peter, behold, Satan demanded to have you that he might sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. So stop there for a second because that just hit me. It's like he's saying, I want you to realize that when you come back to me again, I want you to strengthen other people. Use what you've been through to help others. That's what I want you to do. Verse 33, Peter said to him, Lord, I am ready to go with you both to prison and to death. And Jesus said, I tell you, Peter, the rooster will not crow this day until you deny 3 times that you know me. And Peter's like, yeah, that won't happen. But look at Luke 22, verse 54. Then they seized him, Jesus, led him away, bringing him into the high priest's home. Peter was following at a distance, and when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down, Peter sat down among them. Then a servant girl, seeing him as he sat in the light and looking closely at him, said, This man was also with him. But he denied it, saying, Woman, I do not know him. This is Peter. And a little later, someone else saw him and said, You also are one of them. But Peter said, Man, I am not. And after an interval of about an hour, still another insisted, saying, Certainly this man also was with him, for he too is a Galilean. But Peter said, Man, I do not know what you were talking about. Immediately while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, how he had said to him, Before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. And some of you are at that point where you just want to weep bitterly because you're like, I once was this, I denied Christ. And I want you to know that that's okay. You can come back to him. There's nothing that has ever separated you from that. Look what happens when Jesus is resurrected in Mark 16. And he said to them, Do not be alarmed, 16 verse 6. And he said to them, Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. And I love that. He separates Peter. He didn't say, hey, go tell the disciples and John. He said, go tell the disciples and Peter, because Jesus knows that Peter is devastated. He denied him 3 times. And that's scary and frightening and sad and heartbreaking and all of that. And yet Jesus says, I love you this much that I will single you out and say, it's okay, Peter, just come back to me. And I want us to know, I want you to know that if you are there, that you've walked away from God, any moment you can give it up. Say, God, Jesus, I want you in my life. I want you to run my life. I don't want to just play the Christian game. I'm going to go to church and I'm going to say I'm a Christian. No, I give my life to you. Now do with me whatever you want. Use my story in the past to help someone. That is my job from here on out. So, on the topic of will God forgive me, the answer is yes, 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 a resounding yes. And he has forgotten your past and he wants to use you. So move on, just like the men in the Bible, and that's why we read the Bible, so that we can see what they did, so we can follow in their footsteps. Okay, one last verse, Philippians 3:13. Brethren, I do not regard myself as having laid a hold of it yet, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and reaching forward to what lies ahead. Nothing you did in your past ever is held against you if you are a follower of Christ. Move on. It says, forget it and move on. And that's what I wanted today to be about. All right, let's head to the next section real quick. Okay, we have 10 minutes. I read something yesterday about a man, and he went to this community meeting, prayer meeting. And he sat at this table, and he was telling the group of men, they were probably, this guy was about 50, and he was telling these men, I'm so excited to retire. And when I retire, I told my wife this morning that I'm just going to sit around the house and watch TV all day long. And the men looked at him, and they're like, you've got to be kidding. Like, why would you do that? And the one guy stood up and said, if you do that, you will be dead in a year. And the guy that wanted to retire like that was looking like, why would I be dead? And he said, well, if the lack of purpose in your life doesn't kill you, Your wife will, okay? So, and I thought that was great because I'm like, yes, exactly. But then I thought about this, and I thought, you know what? The Bible never ever talks about retirement. None of us are to retire. When God is done using us for his kingdom, we'll be dead. Until that point, we don't retire and just like, you may retire from your job, but your overarching job that we talked about last week is following Christ and serving him till the day that you die. And so I think that if you're here and you're breathing, he wants to use you. And I want us to remember that. So throw your past off, start today. And that was my heart for what we were talking about. All right, let's just go to the next thing real quick. We saw last week Levi gets up, follows Christ, and the first thing he does is throw a big party. And it's like, yay, I want all my sinner friends to know the freedom that God has. So he throws a party. And then you have the ridiculous Pharisees, the religious people of the day, come in. Look at verse 30. I think we're at Luke 5:30. The Pharisees and their scribes began grumbling at his disciples, saying, "Why do you eat and drink with the tax collectors and sinners?" And Jesus answered and said to them, "It is not those who are well that need a physician, but those who are sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." And this is the stuff that we need to read about when we say, this is why I love Jesus. He doesn't care about the self-righteous group of people that think they're so good because they do good things. He says, I have come for those that know they're sick and know they need a Savior and know they need help. That is who I come for. And I want to read something today, and it's really kind of long, but I want to end with it. And I don't like to do that a lot, but this was kind of an important story that we didn't get to last week. But I want us to realize that in our life, we have one of two choices with people. And I learned this yesterday. We can either be a judge or we can be a doctor. And most of us would say, oh, I'm a doctor, because a doctor wants to take people and help heal them. That's your job, make them better. Unfortunately, we live in a world where Christians, many Christians, me included, are judges. I want to be a doctor, but I'm a judge. I'm at the tanning booth a couple years ago, and I was getting ready to go in just as this lady came out. This lady comes out, she's screaming, she's cussing, F this, F that, blah, blah, blah. There's ants in here, okay? I'm thinking, that whole thing, just because there was an ant in your room, give me a break. Okay, so I was really annoyed, and I'm looking at her like, what's your problem? You're just, who does that? Who talks like that? And blah, blah, blah. You know, so I went off in this, in my mind, of course. That's a judge. That's a judge that says, what's wrong with you? Okay? On the other hand, if I were a doctor, I would have been like, I need to pray for you. Silently, because she might have hit me if I said, can I pray for you? But I think there's this big difference. Yesterday, it was a really tough afternoon. The night before Cheyenne, she said, Mom, and I don't get the whole tweeting world in high school, and if you go to this high school, you might have even heard this. Somebody got on and made a Twitter account, whatever that even means, okay? So, and it was not nice. And what whoever it was posting, it was really ugly things about people in the school. Joe so-and-so, you're fat. So-and-so, you're ugly. So-and-so, I mean, it was horrific, and it was filthy, and it was everything about it was just a nightmare. And so yesterday, Cheyenne called me when she got out of school, and she said, Mom, she said, whoever it was that did this Twitter account put this girl's name at the top as if all of this stuff was coming from her. So now the whole school's in an uproar. She said, Mom, someone just ruined her life. So they had this big mob after school that's going to go beat the living tar out of this girl, okay? And all of these people, they had to get her to the office and escort her into the office to keep her safe. Okay, it was a bad deal. And I told Cheyenne, I said, please tell me that you are a friend of this girl. And she's like, Mom, I used to know her, and, you know, she probably, you know, she brought on her own things in her life. And I was so sad. I started crying, and I said, Cheyenne, you have no idea what this girl has lived through in her life. You don't know. I don't know the girl. But I said, Cheyenne, you have one of two choices. You are either going to judge her in front of all your friends. Yeah, she shouldn't have done that, and she should have slept with that guy. She shouldn't have slept with that guy, and she should. Or you could be the person that's the doctor and says, you guys, let's pray for her. Okay, so I'm a wreck. Okay, so I'm just like, so I hang up with the phone. We had a conversation about that. Dusty gets in the car. I literally was sobbing. I was so upset. I'm like, Dusty, do not ever, ever talk about people like this behind their back or tweet. I said, what is this world coming to? And he said, Mom, she's my friend. I go to school with her. And I said, you text her. He goes, Mom, I've been texting her for the last hour. He said, I text her and said, I just want you to know I'm always your friend. And if there's anything I can do. And she wrote back and she said, somebody set me up. And she doesn't even know if she'll ever be able to come back to school here again now because of it. And so we were at Walmart and she said, Dusty texted her and I said, tell her we will pick her up. She's still in the office after school. She can't leave yet. I said, tell her we will pick her up and take her to the rec center and she just to get her out. And she wrote back and she said, thank you so much, Dusty. I just want to go home, but I can't yet because people are at my house. Okay, this is the horrifying thing that these kids are living through. And I was so heartbroken because I thought, but it made me think about us as women. Like, these are kids, and you get that. I said, high school is just stupid. We're women. The neighbor next door is sleeping with the neighbor next door, okay? This lady's working 2 jobs. She's a single mom, and her kids are unruly, and we're gossiping about her because it's like, can you believe that her kids are like that? Yeah, her kids are like that because her husband's an idiot and doesn't pay child support, and she's stuck doing this. And who are we? We're judging her. And I want us as women to come in and say, I don't want to judge anymore. I want to be a doctor. I want to be there to help people. And I know we're not going to get through this story, but I want to, we have 2 minutes. Let's just look at it real quick and then we'll end. Eyes of a doctor, eyes of a judge. Let's suppose that you're on your way to work each morning. You usually stop at Starbucks. You tend to get to the store at the same time. You usually see a young girl who gets there about the same time you do. On many mornings, you find yourself standing next to each other in line. In fact, you both order the same thing, double espresso with skim milk. She seems to be into the gothic culture, black hair, black clothes, knee-high jack boots, black fingernails, black lipstick, piercings in the nose, lips, ears, and eyebrows, and scattered tattoos. She usually has a backpack that she has to take to get her money. Sometimes it seems hard for her to hold the backpack, get the money, and pay for the coffee all at the same time. She doesn't make too much eye contact with others. You wonder whether you should strike up a conversation with her, maybe offer to hold her backpack while she pays. You're not sure what to do with the whole gothic bit, and you don't know whether she'd give you a dark look and not say anything. Should you try to be friendly? Maybe find out what brings you both to the same Starbucks each morning. See if she ever tries any of the other specialty coffees. Move toward greeting her each morning. Learn about other parts of her life. Yes, by all means, move into her world. Make a comment one day about how the barista probably already knows both of your orders as soon as you walk in. Offer to hold her backpack while she pays. A couple of days later, tell her your name and ask for hers. If she misses a few days, tell her you hope she wasn't sick and the next time you see her. Why move into her world? Because with the eyes of a doctor, you see a hurt that God can heal. You see an anger and alienation. Maybe it's because of sexual abuse from a stepfather, a brother, or an older boyfriend. But you see the heaviness, the sadness. With the eyes of a doctor, you see a hurt that God can heal. There's a man at work that everyone shakes their head at. He's been divorced a couple of times, and both his ex-wives are suing him for past child support. He's a deadbeat dad, way behind on his support, sending them just a little bit every so often. He's been living with another woman and her small child, but a couple of weeks ago he slapped her around pretty hard. She called the cops. He spent a couple nights in jail. She kicked him out. Now he has a restraining order against him. He's currently living in one of the cheap motels that rents by the month. Every day at lunch he goes out by himself to get a hamburger or a burrito, always coming back with mustard or chili on his shirt. Nobody talks very much to him because he's too quick to complain about how everyone's taking advantage of him. Everyone's pushing his buttons. Everyone's squeezing him dry. Who wants to listen to that? You've often wondered about being nice and offering to go to lunch with him. You like the same fast food he does, Burger King, Taco Bell, Subway, and you know Subway has a sale going on, 3-foot-long sandwiches for $10. You couldn't possibly eat that much, but it seems like a shame not to take advantage of such a bargain. Should you invite him along one day? Yes. By all means, move into his world. Go to lunch with him. When you get to Subway and you both sit down with your sandwiches and chips and drink, ask him if he's watched any of the baseball playoffs. Who's he rooting for in the World Series? Mention that it's just about the worst umpiring you've ever seen. Why move into his world? Because with the eyes of a doctor, you see hurt that God can heal. You see a bitterness at life, failing at relationships, blaming others instead of knowing how to change himself. You sense his fear of future, no money, a criminal record on the books, and his desperation over being all alone in the world. With the eyes of a doctor, you see a hurt that God can heal. Your company has a co-ed softball team that competes in the city league. They're looking for a couple extra players. You like softball. You like the feel of connecting on a pitch, running down a fly ball, making a clothesline throw on one hop to home plate to nail a runner to try to score. The first game is next Tuesday, and they're pushing you to join, but you're not sure. You like softball, but you don't know about playing with the people in the office. You went to a company picnic a couple months ago where there was a pickup softball game. Some of the guys were drinking a lot of beer, getting pretty raunchy in their comments, and some of the women on the other team, about some of the other women on the other team. Some of the wives of your coworkers were loudmouthed. They flirted with their other husbands. The parents yelled mean things at their children, but nothing to control them. And in the parking lot, one of the married men from the office who had come to the picnic by himself was behind his pickup truck, going at it pretty heavy with one of the single moms in the office. Do you want to deal with all that every week? Should you join the team? Yes, by all means. Move into their world, get to the park, shag those balls, and run those bases. Bring some Cokes to put in with their beers. When one of the women on the other team lines into a gap between center and left for a stand-up double, instead of questioning her sexual preference, shout out, "Great hit! Did you play in college?" Buy a cheap glove for the single mom's kid. Ask if he wants to be a bat boy. Have him sit beside you at the bench and teach him the strategies of the game. Why move into his world? Because with the eyes of a doctor, you see the hurts that God can heal. You see that the machismo and the raunchiness merely disguises insecurity and failure. You see marriages where there's no love and children that don't have the security of boundaries. You see the single mom's loneliness and vulnerability that put her at risk of being deeply hurt. With the eyes of a doctor, you see the hurts that God can heal. In life, we can have the eyes of a judge or we can have the eyes of a doctor. The eyes of a judge sees a gothic girl, a deadbeat dad, and a foul-mouthed team. Leave us thinking, why have anything to do with them? But the eyes of a doctor sees the hurts that God can heal. That came from The Eyes of a Doctor by Donald Sunukjian. So the question is, as I want to leave today, is am I a judge or am I a doctor? And I want to just say, I want us to be women who are doctors, and let's move towards that. And if we're judging people, can we stop and say, God, please change me. I do not want to be like that anymore.
All right, I thought that was a great reminder for us to look within ourselves and ask the question, am I more of a judge or am I more of a doctor? How am I treating people? Do I judge them or do I desire to actually help them? And if we say, I look more like a judge, then maybe today is the day where we stop and we look around and we see that sometimes people act the way they do, and it may actually not be any fault of their own. Maybe it was how they were raised in a weird church. Like, we just don't know. So I think today's lesson is about, let's be a little more gracious to people instead of judgmental. Have a good week.